Hey guys, welcome. We are so excited to be here. This is our first ever movie review session. I will say, I always say this because I feel like film is a medium that it's very easy to be critical of, and it's so accessible. So everybody feels like they're an expert. But I know we both know how much work it takes to make a film. So that being said, like regardless of the things that we say about these films, we are so respectful and appreciative of all of the artists that put their time and their souls into these stories. You know, some people, it was their first job on these movies. So I love to think about that because, you don't want to slam somebody's film. But that being said, we're going to do that exactly during this.
Some good things, some bad things.
When it comes to big budget films, with the exception of maybe like one or two that are a little bit more mid-range, I do have higher standards for big budget films. We have both worked in the indie world for so many years, and it truly is so difficult to make an indie film. So I feel like I'm more forgiving of indie filmmakers because you have constraints that these films do not have. I
Right.
worked on a film once where they spent so much money on vehicles because we were in the middle of nowhere filming, and the damage to vehicles totaled an exorbitant amount. I couldn't believe how much money they spent on repairing rental cars. I think it's okay for us to talk about these films in a harsher way.
Well, I think the first on the list is a Barbie. We all want to talk about Barbie.
Directed by Greta Gerwig.
Was it beautifully visually stimulating? 100%. Was it beautifully directed? And I obviously liked, the overall themes of, poking fun at the duality of Barbie being both like a feminist icon, but also like a symbol of everything that we've grown up with in the patriarchy, right? Standards of beauty that we all try to live up to. And I love Noah Baumbach. I think he helped write and direct it. I love his films, The Squid and the Whale. But yeah, for some reason the film didn't resonate. Yeah, I think that the screenplay could have been improved upon. My husband thinks that Ryan Gosling's role was like the best part. But yeah, I kind of like finished the movie and I was like, okay, cool, so what? Like, and there was a part where was it America Ferrera's character, has this huge, monologue epiphany, and it's like we're thinking that we all haven't heard these things before. Like it's supposed to be something completely new that we haven't heard of. But of course, every single woman has had those thoughts.
Yeah.
So one more thing I wanted to say that I don't think a lot of people have talked about is films that are supportive of women, but they're also putting down men. And I don't like that. Life is hard. Okay. Yeah, it might be harder for some people. It might be easier for some people, but it's not like a walk in the park for all men. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I love Greta Gerwig. I loved Frances Ha. Like I do. I love her work. I love her as a director, as an actor. So I don't know if you remember, this was your experience in elementary school, but do you remember when you were like in class and you were running for something and the whole class had to vote? But you couldn't vote for yourself. You had to vote for somebody else, even if you were running.
Mhm.
I kind of liken Barbie to that, where I feel like as women, we should vote for ourselves.
Yeah.
I didn't love it. I liked it. I thought it was fun. It didn't really know what it was. I
Yeah.
feel like the writing and the story, it wasn't a comedy. It wasn't really a drama. It was just kind of in this ambiguous genre that I think for people to like be able to process it, like they just need that comfort of like, oh, this is really funny. This is a comedy. Or, oh, this is like very touching and poignant. I think it's a drama. And I feel like Barbie really they didn't know what it was.
And it's funny that you say that, but at the same time, like, yeah, it was sort of all over the place, but at least the tone was consistent.
The tone was consistent for sure. I thought that the performances, I think Margot Robbie is just like not real. First of all, I know that someplace in Australia they just grow actors and they put them out because they are fantastic. They just like pump them out, like Kate Blanchett, Margot Robbie. Like I just don't know where they come from. Toni Collette, like where do
So
they
good. Oh,
NIDA is a very good acting school in Australia. I'm not sure if they all went there, but I think she's exquisite. She just gets those acting moments and they go from, they're so fresh and they're so inventive and like just such a light touch. It's her performance I thought was so nuanced and lovely. Just like all of the roller coaster of emotions that she and the behavior that she
yeah,
experienced throughout the journey for her character, like it was just understated and lovely, and she made it look so easy.
easy.
Not like, could you imagine getting the script and being like, you're gonna play a Barbie doll?
Right.
And like as an actor, I'm like, you'd come up with ideas and you'd have the guidance of your director, of course, but creating those was totally her
Her
job.
choice. Yeah.
And she, like, I thought she was exquisite. The moment that they lost me was the dance number.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And I grew up on musicals. I love crazy musicals from the 60s and 70s and like things that you're like, oh, this is on TV, click. And I'm like, oh, this is on TV. The dance number, I was just like, Greta, let's talk about the dance number.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt like it was just so labored and unnecessary. I did not enjoy it.
These are the things that I question is like, okay, things are trending like that. Let's put it in the movie. I wonder what the relationship was that they truly had with Mattel. Were they forced to do certain things or like, what was their power in making this? And did
Yeah.
Greta have to, obviously take that balance and come up with something that worked for everybody?
100%. Was it a fresh story? Was it something that I'm like, oh, like, no, not really. Like
Yeah,
it's just kind of like a little bit more of the same. I will say in the whole voting for ourselves capacity, I love that a film directed, written, starring a woman made a shit ton of
of
money.
money.
I love that.
Yeah,
I
yep,
love all of the press it got. I love the fact that like, they got all of this attention, like,
yeah.
good, like,
Whoever did promotional marketing, incredible, incredible
amazing,
job. Like,
amazing.
yeah, no, I mean, hats off. I mean, we know that women films do really well at the box office. We know that.
Yeah, it's true. As lukewarm as we feel about Barbie, like, how many films created by a man, like traditional guy, blah, 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 creating a film, like, there are so many that are just kind of like, eh. So I say, good for Barbie, good for Greta. I'd probably give Barbie 3.5 Kates out of five. We're going on a five scale, five Kates, five Merediths.
I think I'd give it a three, three Merediths.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the next movie
The
here?
next movie is The Holdovers.
I just love indie coming to age movies.
Can we please have more indie movies? More indie movies, please.
And when we say indie, like let's just see
Like,
what
it is definitely funded by a studio because Paul Giamatti is in it.
yeah, and Alexander Payne directed.
It
They
it is.
made 38 million at the box office, but I'm
Like,
curious.
do we know what the budget for this? We're gonna look up the budget, but it's kind of goes against everything that I just said about yay Barbie voting for ourselves. Because this is a story about a bunch of white guys, and I love it. Also, as I was watching it, I was thinking, what if the same movie was about women? Like a bunch
Yeah.
of young women at a school and a female teacher was stuck over the holidays watching them. I don't know if it would have had the same reception. I think people would say it's a chick movie. Um,
Yeah.
that's just
There would
my
have been more romance in it though, for sure. Because
it
the
would
the one thing that was missing for me was like the young kid finding somebody. But it premiered at the Telluride Film Festival, and then
the
it was
Telluride
scooped up.
Film Festival is not a film festival for actual indie filmmakers. It's a film festival for fake indie filmmakers that are actually like Hollywood people. Just
Exactly.
FYI, listeners, because most of the film festivals are not real indie film festivals. They're just like a way of Hollywood getting out other movies. That's
Yeah.
just that's
Yeah.
my take. Someone can please reach out if you feel differently and let me know if I'm wrong because I love being wrong, but I don't think I am.
Right, because films that premiere at film festivals like Telluride wouldn't be scooped up by Focus Features, which this one did.
Yeah, I was so excited to see this movie because I loved Sideways. I think Sideways is one of my favorite movies. Paul
Mhm.
Giamatti is also one of my favorite actors, just because he is so nuanced in his work. The way he can go from one acting idea to the next, to the next, to the next, and just string them all together to have just an exquisite behavior that you're just like, oh my God, like you worked that whole bit out. Like you went from, learning information and you can see him processing it in character and letting it just kind of wash over himself and then coming to this place that is completely different from where he started at when he got that information without saying a word. And that is the mark of an amazing actor. I thought he was great. I mean, he plays a curmudgeon in this, and he does it in such a likable way.
I know. I love him.
I think that is also a skill, but I love the journey of his character. And I love the fact that the change in him is like, it's not in your face. It's just so subtle,
The whole film
but it's
is
so deep. Like that is what's wrong with movies these days. Like they try to pile in so much stuff and not enough. Like it's always too much and not enough. So they think that you can do it with intellect and putting a lot of ideas into something, and it's not. It's simple, but it has to be deep. It has to be a primal need for something. So, Paul Giamatti's character, he is this curmudgeon that is drinking his way through like babysitting these, very wealthy kids who are at a boarding school over the holidays. He's been this way forever. And, at the beginning of the movie, you're like, he's never going to change. Like, and you find over the course of the film that as he really like kind of lets people in, it changes him. It's one of my favorite movies this year.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. The writing was just so tight, so well written, so witty. Obviously Paul Giamatti always has those quick, comebacks, just the language, the combination of words. It's
Yeah,
just poetic, really, honestly. Each character really came to life for me, and each character evolved by the end in a very subtle way, as you said.
noticeable. That's the key. It wasn't like, most films where you're like, you understand that they changed, but you like actually felt it.
Let's talk about Div what's her name? Divine Joy. Yeah.
Yeah. So Divine Joy Randolph plays Mary Lamb, who is the cook at the school, and she lost her son. Her son was killed in battle, right? I mean, her performance is amazing.
And it's the touch of the times, which was, the mid 70s, to understand how these rich boarding kids looked at her
Mhm.
or didn't look at her and
Right.
didn't want to talk to her until they understood her situation and understood that, you know, they are being little assholes.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful story just for her.
That scene at the party, I just got the chills. As an actor, you think about it and you just wonder what that day was like for her, like on set or the couple of days that it took. Like that must
Emotionally. Yeah.
just such an intense couple of days to work through. I hope that they would have kept it on one day because that's all I don't know. I mean, that's a lot to handle for an actor. But it was just so beautifully done. And yeah, I mean, she was great. I hope she wins.
There's just such a warmth to this film that you don't get very often in many films. Like, it's And
It's
it's like it's not even like it's odd because it's like a winter film and it's like they're all like cold and alone and like lonely,
yeah,
but it's just such a vibe. I love it. I
I
just loved
agree.
it.
I agree. I think that there's it's an authenticity, I think. I
Yeah.
think that this is a tremendously authentic film. You know, there was not one moment where I'm like, that's what plagues the industry. Like there's so much crap that is pumped out just to get content out. And I hate that word because getting content out is like not the same as making a film. I'm sorry. And I think that this is like it is an exceptional film. It is one of those films that you see once and that when it's on TV or on HBO or whatever, and you have the
I'm gonna watch
opportunity
it.
to watch it again, you will.
That to me is a big part of what a good film is. Yeah.
Because it becomes a part of your soul. Like it's something that you think about after you
Yeah.
see it.
Yes.
Like, don't you want that? Like that's what I hope people watch my films after, they watch it the first time. They're like, oh, there's something about that. I'd watch it again. I think that's a mark of a great film, and this is definitely a great film that I would watch again and again. I enjoyed this. I give this 5 Kates.
5 Merediths.
Yeah. Maestro is next. Maestro is starring Bradley Cooper and Carey Mulligan. It's the story of the lifelong relationship of conductor-composer Leonard Bernstein and actress Felicia Montealegre Cohn Bernstein.
Right. Played by Carey
Played by
Mulligan.
Carey Mulligan.
Oh, oh.
She is just like everything I look for in an actor. She gets top billing in this. You could see like her name is first before Bradley Cooper's, as it should be.
Yeah.
So Bradley Cooper and Josh Singer wrote this film.
And he had some producer help from Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg and
Okay.
more.
But those unknown people, oh, who are those guys?
I don't know them. Uh,
Those newcomers.
you know what I will say? So for those who don't know, my mother is a classical pianist and she toured the world. You know, she went to Juilliard and Yale, and she is too afraid to watch this film. She's afraid that the piece itself won't live up to what she believes it should be. As far as the musicality of it,
It's like watching something about someone who had an impact on your life and you know it won't do them justice.
yeah, yeah.
Like someone who is such an important figure in your life.
Yeah.
I could
And
see
for
that.
somebody like my mom who lives and breathes classical music,
I love that.
uh
I feel like
she
more people should live and breathe classical music.
yeah, and she's like, nobody understands me, Meredith. I'm
Oh,
like, no, I understand what a beautiful phrase is and what gorgeous chords and lush chords are, like I get it, mom. Um
oh,
but I think that somebody like her and myself were sort of expecting the film to be more about the gravitas of the music that made him
yeah.
who he was. It was more of a biographical film, which is fine, which is great. I think it's good to learn about composers and to learn about what the music does to them in their lives, but this was more about his personal relationships and how he lived his life. The makeup,
The make,
Kazuhiro,
yeah,
he's been
yeah,
nominated time and time again for his makeup. And in this one in particular, I know that he and Bradley like worked very closely together. There's a quote: the youngest look typically took 2 hours and 15 minutes, and the last stage was about 5 hours. So
that's
when Bradley Cooper is completely covered, including arm and body suits,
yeah,
because they also had to change the posture of his body, obviously, as he's
yeah,
getting older,
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And that is something that is done with makeup, but also something that he would probably have to bring also.
oh yeah.
So to work that way as an actor, I think is really interesting. I feel like it would be, I mean, it would be a tremendously long day. So, listeners, think about it this way. You're in the makeup chair, you get up at, you know, five,
Yeah.
six in the makeup chair for 5 hours before you even shoot a scene. For him to transform into this older character, like I feel like it would be a pretty intense transition. Good job, Bradley. You have our approval.
But yeah, I wasn't expecting a biographical piece. That's the kind of what threw me
I've heard
off.
that from so many other people. I had a
Yeah.
friend who saw it at the DGA, I think, and the Directors Guild of America. I think they had a screening, and I'm not sure. I think Bradley Cooper may have been there. But my friend was like, I was a little disappointed because I thought it was going to be this thing that it wasn't. I'll be honest. I went in, I wanted to love it. I did not love it. I thought the story was completely non-existent. Like there was no story. There was no central question that you were like, I need to know this.
Yeah.
And that to me, it just bothered me. I'm
Yeah.
like, it was interesting. There were some choices that were made specifically with music. I understand why he did it, but I don't agree with how he used his music throughout the film. It
Yes.
took me out of the moment, and I thought it was kind of strange. There was a moment when he meets Carey Mulligan's character, and the music just did not support what was going on in the story. It actually detracted from it. And I was like, why is that music there?
Mm.
And I understand that there's probably some really smart reason why it was put there, just knowing his body of work. I'm sure it was a very smart intellectual choice to put it there. Um, but for me, like feeling it totally took me out of the moment. There was no growth in his character. It's not like he changed.
He continuously looked down upon himself no matter at what point in life he was in. He felt like he always needed he should have produced more work than he supposedly did. I mean, yeah,
And
and
maybe the lack of touching on his work, maybe that really affected the movie. Like maybe they really should have had that be a part of even like the B story, like having his work be the B story, but a little bit in a stronger way.
yeah, like I would have liked to see him like workshop West Side Story, like
Something.
not just use not just
Yeah.
use a piece of it for the story itself, but like yeah, really talk about why he's created the music that he did and how. Like Gershwin is like the closest thing to a Bernstein maybe like in style and explosive chords and like craziness
Yeah.
going on that's still so musical and exciting and hard to play actually.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I just wish it was more covered about the great things that he actually did do instead of the life that he led.
This is the example of like too much and not enough for
Sure.
me. I feel like this is a really great example of where the holdovers was so simple and so exquisitely done, so exquisitely acted because there was something at stake for the story. There was something at stake, and the stakes were high. Even though it wasn't in your face, the stakes were high. You could feel it. In this story, the stakes were like non-existent.
And it's so sad that his wife ends up, like on her deathbed by the end.
Yeah, that was a moment, to be honest, for me. I don't know if you felt the same way, but in the film, that was a moment for me where I was like, "Oh, I'm interested." Like because there were actual stakes. And like even like the end scenes where they're in the house with the kids and it was a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. It's like, did you expect him to be at the doctor's office? Like, sort of not really. Like,
No. No, and I will say Carey Mulligan, I could watch her all day, any day, do anything. She is such an amazing actor. Uh,
I know that she did a ton of research for this role. I know that she and Bradley also did something called a dream workshop. So
yes.
to fully immerse in the character, I think that it might have helped perhaps that essentially they would write down, wake up in the middle of the night or in the morning, write down their dreams if they had any, and
Wow.
trying to bring that subconscious to the forefront to see if anything would connect to their character on screen.
So here's the difference between studio filmmaking and indie filmmaking. Studio filmmaking, actors get to have dream workshops. Indie filmmaking, actors can't really pay their rent, can't really make their film, are barely sleeping, waking themselves up at like 5 o'clock and wondering if they're going to make their day while they're shooting.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, other things about like non-indie filmmaking, huge budget films is like, oh yeah, you might need to gain some weight for this role or lose some weight for this role. Like, oh, here's a
Exactly.
personal trainer and a chef and whatever else you need to
Yeah.
make this role come to life for you.
On the studio.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
I'm
it's
gonna work
a
that into the budget for the next film that we're doing, Meredith. So we'll get
yeah.
weekly massages. That'll be part of our budget.
Yeah, I'm a hot stone kind of girl, so
Yeah. Okay, cool.
yeah, I don't think your dreams are gonna necessarily help you
Dream
uncover
about making a better film.
uncover. Yeah, yeah. No, and this is what's so hard about filmmaking is that subtle nuance that some directors can capture and others just
Yeah.
oop, it's really hard.
And something that I wonder about this film is like what wasn't included, because sometimes that is something that can change an entire film. I'd give I'd give this 3 Kates.
I think I'm the same rating, 3 Merediths.
Yeah, I really wanted it to be a 4 or 5. I was excited to see it. I
Me
really was.
too.
Had the potential of being such a great story, but I was just like, oh, where is the story? Hmm.
Okay. So next on the list we have Oppenheimer, good old Oppie.
Or as I like to call it, Oppensnoozer.
Oh yeah. Tell us what you really feel.
Okay. I did not love this film. Of all of the films, like I I struggled with this one. I'm not gonna lie.
Christopher
Like
Nolan.
I love Christopher Nolan, but I'm not gonna lie. Like some of his films, I'm like, yay. Some of them, I'm like, it just like, come on, man, cut your film down. Like, cut it down. We all exist in this very streamlined, specific way of telling a story. And I'm not saying that there isn't space for long movies, but when it comes to me getting my SAG screeners and I see somebody's film is like 2.5, 3 hours, like, okay, I'll take 2.5 hours, 3 hours, 3.5
Yeah.
hours. I'm like, you've lost me. If I have to
Yeah.
pack a lunch to watch your movie, I say no, thank you. I'm serious.
One of his earliest films, Memento, it came out in 2000. Like even that was like 2 hours. And that
Memento
was
was
24
such a,
years ago.
I mean, I can't believe that. It's such a revolutionary way of telling a story. Like
Editing.
screenwriters don't even like talking about it because
The
they're like,
editing.
what's the
Yeah.
structure of Memento? And they're like, "Fuck Memento." But Oppenheimer, with every single like 30s, 40s white guy that is in Hollywood making an appearance in the film, it was good. I appreciate it. I love this, Cillian Murphy was very good. He captured this real conundrum of, someone who is working on science and also dealing with the repercussions of his life's work, basically, which I think is a big struggle. I don't know. I feel like I probably would have liked to have a little bit more of that than everything else. His ties to communism and all of those things. Like, I don't know. Maybe it just didn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
I also think Emily Blunt was very good. Did I have the same feeling when I watched Carey Mulligan and Maestro? Like, I feel like I feel the same way about each film. Like, it's about a 3 Kate was I blown away by any of it? No pun intended. No.
Well, did they give her, yeah, I mean, did they give her a big role?
Well,
No.
of course not,
Yeah.
because it's a
At the
movie about
time.
a bunch of white guys
Yeah.
just in a room talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. Like,
It's the subject, Kate. It's the
it's
subject,
just like
you know?
maybe I should have been a little more open to watching it. I do call it Oppensnoozer because I fell asleep through it like a couple times and had to restart it a couple
I
times.
did watch it in 2 installments. I started it with my family over Christmas break, and then I had to go to a friend's house, but then Jacob and I finished it another day. I thought it was extraordinary. I think that a non-linear film edited like this makes sense for what it was. It makes me wonder if Maestro had done a similar situation instead of it being so linear to his life, getting older, older, older. What
Yeah,
if, we put things more into the mix to make it non-linear, more exciting to see how things build to
yeah,
what it becomes.
yeah. So an example of a Christopher Nolan film that is a linear story is Batman. Well, Batman with Heath Ledger. That is a
Yeah.
linear story. He starts with, one moment at the beginning. It goes to, A moment goes to B moment goes to C moment, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's the cause effect, cause effect, cause effect until you get to the end of the story. So Oppenheimer is not a linear story. So if you wanted to compare two Christopher Nolan films.
Yeah, that was good. I think it's really difficult to figure out abstract ways to showcase somebody's inner workings of their mind. And for this film, I think I it worked really well. I think that the visualizations of the inner workings of synapses in brains, like it was very cool. When I was watching this film, it reminded me of watching Chernobyl. The
In
feeling
Chernobyl.
that I got watching Chernobyl was like like sort of suffocating, like I couldn't breathe because
Mhm.
they couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
So it made me feel like, you know that there's this atomic bomb being built in this like desert, right? So at the time, there was nothing in Los Alamos. Now, when you go there, there's
Yeah.
a shit ton of people living there, and you
Yeah.
would never expect that this bomb was built there. Like it's just mind-blowing. It's a horrible invention. What
Yeah.
it did to the environment, what it did to the people, the natives that lived there. I think that some of those themes were missed a little bit.
That was an interesting nuance for me, for him to have to kind of bear that. I think traditionally in stories like this, it's like a race. It's like good guys against bad guys. And, it really kind of calls into question, like, well, who's the bad guy? And I think that that was apparent in Cillian Murphy's performance. Like, you could tell that there was a struggle with this responsibility.
Again, like this is another story where it takes more of a biographical approach. Revisiting flashbacks, were done in a very poignant way. It's sort of like how the brain works. I think
Yeah.
you kind of go back to a memory at different times, at
Yeah.
different points in your life.
He has that skill though. Like that is that in his filmmaking, people always say that films are really the closest thing we have to kind of capturing what a dream is like. You
Yeah.
know, that's the art that is closest to the way our brains think, which I think is such a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
But, I think that he has always been able to capture that and do it in such a lovely way. That doesn't isn't distracting. It doesn't take you out of it. It actually really adds to the film and to the journey.
Yeah. Subject wise, I wouldn't see myself usually watching a film like this. But I would give it a 4 out of 5 Merediths.
Yeah, yeah. I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5, Kate's. Do I think that Cillian Murphy should get the Oscar? I don't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think he was great. I think he is great. I think for me, I like to watch someone be like, I have no idea how the fuck you did that. And I'm not like making light of his performance. Like, I think it is very skilled and it's very well done. But I have like 4 friends that could do the same performance. My acting teacher used to say, an ounce of words is worth a pound of behavior. Like, less is more. Like, less words, more behavior. Like, I don't know. And I have a huge problem with films and plays that talk about things, specifically films that talk about things rather than showing them.
Sure.
Like, show me, don't tell me. Like, nobody wants to sit, unless we're sitting around a campfire and you're telling me a story in life, like, show me with your film. Don't tell me. Enough with the talking. I always say like films are like food. You have to be in the mood for exactly what you're watching. And if you're not, then, if you're in the mood for creme brulee and you're eating Pop-Tarts, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah. Well,
So,
well, with that juxtaposition, yeah, Kate.
well, listen, I love Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
Would I watch Oppenheimer again? I will try. Last but not least is a film called Rustin, which we want to kind of give a little background on this film because I feel like it's not really as well known as the other films that we've touched on. It's about activist Bayard Rustin, who faces racism and homophobia as he helps change the course of civil rights history by orchestrating the 1963 March on Washington. And it's a film starring Coleman Domingo, who is probably one of my most favorite actors. It's directed by George C. Wolfe, and written by Julian Brees, Dustin Lance Black.
Yeah, so I think like right, like in history class, you're not going to learn about this guy, and that's why this film was made.
I have never heard of this person.
Yeah, and he worked very closely with MLK, and he basically was like, "No, this march needs to happen," and he orchestrated the entire thing,
Yeah.
which was 100% successful, 100% peaceful. The script was great. This film, I think, really captured the essence of the resilience of people looking to further better their lives. It captured the time, there was so much big band music and really fun jazz that takes place in this film, which was really well placed. It just got me going because I love big band music and I love jazz.
Yeah.
Um,
Aw, I didn't know that about you, Meredith.
yeah. And then I think towards the end, like the third act, they brought in a lot of archival footage from the march itself, which
Yeah.
was actually really matched really well with their own footage. It was very cool.
I think it's important to note that this march was a precursor to the Million Man March, which was in 1995. I thought this film was exquisite. I'd say it's one of my favorite films. I think anytime that a filmmaker can take a story that deals with such a familiar theme and topic and make it fresh and
Yeah.
exciting and interesting, um, this movie popped. It popped from the beginning to from one moment to the next, to the next, to the next. I was never bored. It was really concise, skillful storytelling. You can tell that the script was good because it's a great film. Coleman Domingo's performance, I I am in love with it. Like, I am in love with his performance in this film. He is such a skilled actor. He just dissolves into this man. To watch any actor be able to do that, and just you lose him in this piece, in this man. And it's not Coleman Domingo, he is Rustin. He is
Yeah.
the guy who is so passionate about what he wants and what he believes in. And like, one of the things that I love about this character is this duality that in civil rights, he can be so fiery and passionate and outspoken about civil rights for African Americans, but he cannot say a word about being in the LGBTQ community. So in one way, he is so muzzled and so hiding who he is. And in the other way, he is so verbal and so passionate about civil rights for African Americans. Like, I thought that was such an interesting relationship between the two pieces of this man. He didn't really hide who he was as a gay man, but there were moments in this movie where you could see that he was like put in his place for being gay. And they were like very powerful moments where you're just like, I can't believe this was not long ago.
Right.
And I'm sure it still happens these days, unfortunately. I enjoyed this movie. There was one moment that I will say took me out of it, and it was at the very end where like he does this amazing thing, and then it was just a little too on the nose. I was
The
just like,
trash pickup.
yeah.
Yeah, he should have gone with the Big Ten.
I like what it meant and I like what it represented. I feel like there was a more subtle way he could have done it. Maybe they had to take that was like that and they just couldn't use it for whatever reason. But again, like,
Yeah, we never know. You never know what
I'm
happens.
pretty sure their budget wasn't like, under 100 grand.
Right.
I thought it was interesting that to show, and I think you touched on this, but like, we always assume in history, like all people kind of fighting for the same things are always on the same side. And, I think it's interesting to show that like it wasn't that way. Like, there was animosity between different groups fighting for the same thing, which happens because everybody wants to be right. And sometimes I think people lose sight of what the common goal is. And I thought that was an interesting nuance. Back then, when people would march on Washington, and take action from that. And nowadays, people like to have rallies and marches, but like there's just such a lack of action. You want to go to a march, great, but like, what are you going to do in life that's going to change this? Like boycotting buses, and it changed the policies. And I feel like our generation just thinks that there's this like magical thinking that something's going to change if we go to a rally.
No.
And it's like, no, you have to take actionable steps to change things. We bring baggage with us when we watch films, and you can't do anything about it. So, if you're really excited to see something and you're just not blown away, then I think we're a little bit harsher on what it is.
Yeah, yeah. And when you see like tons of interviews and posters and
Yep.
like you're like, oh, what's this all about? And then you read about it and then you
Yep.
watch it and you're like, okay. But yeah, for Rustin, I didn't know anything. I didn't know all I knew was the civil rights.
But when you can take a story and tell it in a fresh way that's interesting and it pops and it moves, I am all about really efficient storytelling. That is a talent. I give it 5 Kates.
Nice.
Yeah, I give it five
Wow.
Kates. I really enjoyed it. I love the vibe. I felt like it was authentic and real.
I'd give Rustin, I think, a 4 out of 5.
Nice.
Film exceeded expectations. I thought it was excellent.
And Coleman Domingo, you are amazing. I'm a fan. If it were between Coleman Domingo and Paul Giamatti, like I'd be very happy if either of them won.
Paul Giamatti did win Best Performance for the Holdovers. Yeah.
Did they categorize it as a comedy? Because sometimes with the Golden
Musical or
Globe,
comedy.
they kind of, I actually think the Oscars should follow suit, because I feel like it's unfair that a really skilled, well done film, a comedy or a musical, is going up against an Oppenheimer. Like
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
just so wildly different,
Different.
and it's just not fair. It's time to kind of update the categories a bit. But do you know why they started the Oscars? They started the Oscars because Hollywood films and actors had such bad reputations in the early days of Hollywood because of their behavior, because of the shenanigans that would go on. So they started an award show to elevate it a little bit and to make it a little bit more glamorous and polished.
Oh.
I mean, I will fact check it, but I definitely read that somewhere that they created the Oscars because the shenanigans in early Hollywood were so terrible, and they still are. But we hide it a little bit better these days. I am watching Killers of the Flower Moon. I have had to pack several dinners because Martin Scorsese insists on making his films 3.5 hours long. I'm sorry, I just cannot deal with it. I'm about 30 minutes in, and Lily Gladstone is just an absolute joy. I'm enjoying watching her. I will say, and this is no fault of their own, it's just what happens to A-list celebrities who work a lot. Watching Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro in a period piece,
It takes you out of it. And I appreciate films that find people that are not in the norm of A-list actors.
taking chances on new faces, and not just people like who are convenient for you to put in their film, in your film. Like I think that happens a lot. Why doesn't someone like Lily Gladstone get put in another movie that has nothing to do with Native Americans? Like it bothers me that it takes a film like Killers of the Flower Moon for her to get an opportunity to be in, to show her talent. It's not right. And
Right.
welcome to Hollywood.
Yeah. Jacob and I just finished season 2 of Fargo.
Mm.
It came out like 10 years ago, but
Dude,
so well done. Jesse Plemons, Kirsten Dunst.
they were in that movie last year, man.
Oh, The Power of the Dog.
Power of the Dog.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Jane Campion. Yeah. Even though like it's a subject that I probably wouldn't like, I don't care about, it doesn't resonate with me. I thought
There was
it had a vision. It had a
Yeah,
vision.
uh-huh. But like then, I mean, I guess this goes into a deeper discussion. Is there something lacking in what we do where we need to have important films like that? Yes, I give you that. But the trends are that nobody's making the holdovers. Nobody wants to make Rustin. Like Maybe Rustin a little bit more because biopics are all the fucking rage.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to make a biopic. They want to put a celebrity in it as a vehicle for them to win an Oscar, and that's why they are doing it. But those are the only dramas that are getting bought. The audience doesn't want this. I'm sorry. And that's why films are lacking these days and people are investing in watching series. You need to have the skills and the talent to know how to develop that relationship between the character and the audience. Make sure there's like a save the cat moment so the audience is completely won over by the character, even if they're a villain. You need to know how to do that and then move on and tell the story in an effective, efficient way.
Agreed.
Ah,
It's really hard.
Hollywood is not doing a good job. They need to do better. And the way that they're going to do better is by hiring new people, telling new stories, and getting out of this like disgusting incestual pool of talent. I am an indie filmmaker. I will always root for the really authentic, really good, smaller films. I think that's kind of where my home is. And that's what it resonates with me. Well, thanks so much for listening, guys. It was great to just chit chat movies. If you're interested in learning more about 101, check out our website, www.101podcast.com.
Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, all at 101 Podcast.
Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.